I know him as my sports editor from Hindustan Times, where we made the back pages really fun, quirky, and unique. He's currently the consulting editor for moneycontrol.com and has over 20 years of experience as a journalist, with coverage from World Cup cricket to Wimbledon and prestigious awards to his name as well. But these are some of the things I know him for. So transforming himself into Marlon Brando and his gig at a five-star hotel as a chef to cook dal, all so that he could just describe the experience for a guest column. Trying his hand as a stand-up comic on Mumbai's comedy scene, joining an English language for beginners class just to see what it's like, again, so he could write about it, and I'm sure he will share the tips as well. Going face to face with Mike Tyson, and as he himself put it, face to navel with Maria Sharapova. What makes him unique is the way he can build unusual and interesting stories from really small and trivial encounters. And also a skill that only those who have worked with him know, which is delivering super witty headlines under cutthroat pressure. So there's a lot to learn from him. And so our Smartcast guest today is Akshay Sawai. Hi, Akshay.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Sansi. Hi, everybody.
So let's start with something that all of us try to do every day. And we're just, most of us are sort of fiddling around and trying and making mistakes and getting on with it, which is the art of writing itself. So just to start off, can you give, say, tips for someone who wants to improve their writing?
Okay. So this is a very deep art, and I haven't. It's not like I have mastered it or anything of that sort. But okay. So one thing that helped me, I'll talk about rather than just general academic advice. I'll talk about what helped me. So I started reading really early, and I started reading sports magazines, especially really early. I think because there's a high interest in sports in our household, and we had subscribed to a sports magazine called Sports Week. We had also subscribed to comics and stuff like that. So I picked up the reading habit quite well. I think that is important because what happens is, like in music, you say, hey, aapka kaan tayar hai. So similarly, when you read, you develop a sense of for the sound of the words, for a sense for the language, and things like sentence construction, uh, which surprisingly a lot of people, even in writing related fields, sometimes struggle with. But that becomes easier when you've read a lot, and especially if it's a subject that you enjoy. So that is one thing that helps. The other is obviously you need to be motivated to become good at. Um, Sometimes what I see now, as you know, in the newspaper world or in the media world, there are the writers and then there are the reporters, and then the reporters sort of are not that interested in improving their writing. But I was always interested in becoming a better writer. I was very clear, and so whatever I absorbed, and I did absorb a fair amount. And I must mention the all the quality sports magazines that were there in our time: Sports Week, Sports Star, Sports World. They would also have syndicated articles from New York Times and World Soccer Monthly and all of that. So when you're exposed to that, you do soak up a lot of things. And yes, and if you want to improve, then you start picking up a little bit here, from here, there, everywhere, till you find a style and sound of your.
So on
And
that,
sorry, uh, um, another key moment I would say, apart from reading as a child, was reading the book On Writing by Stephen King. This was I was about 28, 29 then, and I was sort of had hit my first wall in terms of I thought, okay, I was getting a little bored in what I was doing, and I wanted to sort of do different types of writing, and I started buying these books. And Stephen King's On Writing was definitely one of the milestones because it it gave advice in very clear terms. It was very readable also, and it came from a man who has who just about makes about 300 $400 million, whatever, you know, who has made that much. So there was a lot of credibility, and the advice was great. One specific advice I learned was to use adjectives and adverbs sparingly. And by that time, I had been in journalism for about 7 years, but I had not come across this piece of advice anyway. And his whole thing was, okay, like these are like it's like garnish on a dish. That's how an approach. Uh, so yeah, so that reading that book was also it.
So on that same note, do you keep any personal notes? So when you read interesting writing, or when you read particular books or a style that you like, do you keep personal notes of any kind, and something that will help you maybe find ideas, structures, or words easily?
Yeah, I just like whenever I read any book, I do note down if there's anything I find of interest. I note down the page number on the first page of that book. That okay, on page 62, nice description of such and such thing. Page 63, nice insight. It could not be about writing. It could just be about uh, you know, it could be any tip, like in Sapiens, which almost everybody has read. Uh, I found a great tip about uh, detachment, from one's problems, and it's a Buddhist technique where you imagine that you are sitting on a beach, and the water is your life. Now, this may sound a little cuckoo, but it's not. It really is. At least it helped me. And the water is your life. The waves are your life, and there'll be big and stormy waves, and there'll be a calm, placid waters as well. And so you are observing your own life from a certain distance. At the same time, you're not panicking when you see the big waves, nor are you very happy when there are nice happy. You are, and when I tried that technique, it really gave me uh, instant relief. Almost instantly, you develop a certain detachment towards the situation. So yeah. So to answer your question, I note these things down, and it could be about language. It could be about nicely written passage, um, or it could be a tip like this. I do note it down.
And speaking of detachment, do you think writers how attached do you think you should be to your own writing also? I mean, does that even, because one is, we have experienced that as reporters also, that once it goes to the editing table and comes back, a lot of reporters like, what have you done to this copy? Or even when you're saying something which is now going to be read and commented by every person who is on Twitter, or every person who can write a comment on your writing. How much do you modify your writing to sort of please the crowd, or how much of feedback from the lay people do you take seriously? Do you get worried about it? Should you?
I do. If they have a point, it's not like I get thousands of letters. So, but I do. If it's simple, if the point is valid, there is a mistake, you own up to it, and luckily now, because it's all online, you can make that correction. It's not like in print where once it's appeared, you can't correct it. So if the point is valid, I absolutely take it. I'll give you a very recent example, top of the mind example. uh, uh, Naomi Osaka's story, and I had ended my piece by saying that what she did was uh, unilateral and excessive, just pulling out of the door. Yes, I agree that if it's mental health, you have to deal with it sensitively, and it's completely her choice whether to do the press conference or not. But to withdraw from the tournament when the tournament is trying to reach out to you and have a dialogue, I thought that was excessive. And then I got a comment saying that this is, you didn't have to say that it's excessive. because she is going through whatever she's going. And it was from a complete stranger, and but I accepted it. And I also I replied to that person saying point taken, and I informed the desk that can we, this is how, and then I sent an alternative plan. So I take so as long as the point is valid, I do take it. As far as pleasing people, no, no. But at the same time, I don't want to write something which is going to uh, uh, which will lead to me spending a night in jail or something. So if it's about a politician or something, then I would best avoid.
Right.
But again, at the same time, it also depends on the degree of the wrongdoing of that person. Now, if covering a murder in which some powerful or influential person is linked to it, and then you have to write about it, and if that means attracting a lot of vitriol online, in that case, I think you should still go ahead. But I won't try and uh, just for some ungli or chabi, I won't.
And what about writer's block? That is something that all of us, we don't sometimes know we are in the middle of it. Sometimes we don't. You can feel the struggle. Do you think, how do you overcome it? Have you felt it in your career? And especially when you're delivering writing under deadlines, you don't even have that excuse of saying, I can't put it out. It has to come out. So how do you overcome it?
Yeah, I frankly feel that writer's block is something that only authors deserve to speak about, because only they have put out that volume of words that they can actually, in a way, it's a status symbol to have a writer's block. That means you're some author.
You're a writer for starters.
So, so no, I haven't faced any writer's block, but because I haven't been a novelist as such. I have tried, of course. I've written manuscripts many times over, but no, I haven't really faced it. What does happen is we just feel fatigue, uh, and what then happens is that you can still do your job. You can still file a basic uh, story. You can get the job done, but the lines don't flow. Your mind doesn't feel fresh, and at that such times, just take a break of a couple of. That's what works for me.
Get a coffee and get on with it.
Coffee or wherever I like to go for a dip, which sort of that takes me away from, again, that it gives me certain distance from and then it clears my cache. So, but it could be anything. I just so if I have the luxury to take a couple of days off, then I often just switch the phone off. And my wife Alpana, she says that, look, what if it's an emergency, someone needs to contact you? So then I said, okay, well, they'll call you, or they'll call my mother on her landline, or well, too bad. You can't just be a slave to the phone or live in fear. So there are times when for long stretches, I just switch the phone, and either I go for a drive, or go for a walk, or I play, uh, or I watch a movie.
All right. So, as an editor looking at writing, so it could be your own writing or it could be someone else's writing. What do you think are sort of bad writing habits, or any tips that you can come to skip those parts which can be sort of annoying to the reader or annoying to the editor? Some sort of do's and don't do's of writing.
Yeah, I myself have burnt my fingers, have some nasty blogs about myself. I mean, people have. So there are mistakes that, careers are long. They're like 20-year periods. And so mistakes are bound to happen. You are going to lay some eggs along the way. I think one mistake is what happens is there are times when you want to sound impressive, you know, and sometimes you do write just to impress. You know. I'm not saying that's the only purpose of uh, of that's the only driving force, but sometimes you will throw in a certain word or a certain phrase, which is really only to impress. There really is no need for that, because economy of words comes above everything. Like if you have the brevity is the soul, not just of wit, but all comes. But sometimes we just add an adjective here, a phrase there, a metaphor there, and especially when one is younger. Yeah, when I was younger, I feel now, okay, I overdid that. I overwrote that. Uh, Also, because you're so, what happens is you can't help but not get conditioned by what your colleagues are saying and so on. So somewhere you're also writing to them and some validation from them. So that's the mistake. Overwriting is one mistake that I have made, and others make. Uh, uh, the other mistake I would say is to, I don't recall right now. I had there was a thought that came to my mind. I was gone. I come back.
And while we think about that, I'll also ask all the people who are on the call.
Sorry, I'm back. I remembered that.
Yeah.
I think another mistake I made was when I was with a certain magazine, very high quality magazine, good magazine. I enjoyed my time there. But the culture of that place was, you know, was a little smart aleck. You know, everybody's writing was a little smart aleck. Everybody's thinking was a little cynical, snobbish. It was a snarky tone. And I got caught up in that. And then when I started writing like that, uh, slightly mocking tone. Uh, and then there was this trend of, even editors would say it has to be irreverent, irreverent, irreverent. And fundamentally, I don't believe in irreverence for the sake of it. I mean, if you're talking to, say, Sachin Tendulkar, you can't deny that what he's done is just legend. Hello.
Go ahead. I can hear you. It's just
Yeah.
gone.
So irreverence for the sake of it is something it became a fad, but I didn't subscribe to it. But for a while, I did get caught. Now, and that is another mistake that I made. So the lesson from that was you just have to be yourself. Uh, you can't let the culture of company affect you so much that you start talking like them or start writing.
So I'll also ask all of the others who are on the call as when they have a question regarding, we are talking about writing right now. We'll be moving on to other topics related to the art of writing. If you have any questions, do send in on the chat and I'll read them out. While we do that, Akshay, can you give some tips on how to write headlines? Now, this is something which matters to us when we send out even stuff like newsletters or emails or so it is sort of crucial, especially in the world of clickbait. You don't want to be so reckless as to just write something which is not going to have any merit in the rest of the copy. But what are your tips on coming up with great headlines, especially when you have to do it quickly?
Yeah. So again, I think it starts with the kind of everything that you've soaked up in all the years, your childhood, in your youth, or even currently what shows you may be watching and so on, and that helps. For example, see, even like when we were children, advertisements were a big event. Okay, we watched Doordarshan, and so if there was a movie or so on, then in the interval they would play the advertisement. And we used to watch even the advertisements with great interest. And some of the lines, were very nicely crafted. You know, like जो जो बीवी से करे प्यार प्रेस्टीज से कैसे करे इनकार, you know. So you sort of subconsciously you start developing a, an antenna for something that sounds catchy. Uh, then like the writer Kiran Nagarkar, he, so he's I think in Ravan and Eddie, he wrote about this. He grew up in the Shami Kapoor era. He wrote about just the title of Dil Dekhe Dekho, and he said he just rolls off the mouth of the tongue so beautifully. Dil Dekhe Dekho, so it's short, it's catchy, and at the same time, it is conveying something, like give your heart away and Dil Dekhe Dekho. So I think that's the key. So again, if you're in a have to give a headline, it's deadline time, then you first see, okay, who the protagonists are. You have to do justice. First priority is that main story has to be communicated. Okay. Or the main protagonist has to be acknowledged. So the other day we spoke about when Adam Gilchrist got that century, the World Cup final, and our headline was Adam Bomb. Adam Bomb. So I like it because it's short, again, pretty. Two, it's acknowledging. It's not saying. It's not acknowledging some third person. It's you are giving credit to the protagonist, the main protagonist, who was Adam Gilchrist. And three, it's catchy. So I think you need to. So these are you have to remember this, that the first commitment is towards conveying giving credit to either that event or the main character in that event. And two, in your spare time, you have to start noticing these. Like I gave you the example of जो बीवी से करे प्यार प्रेस्टीज से कैसे इकरार, हॉकिंस किसी की वजह खाना कैसे पकाए, और what that line was. Amo livda jawab. All these lines have a certain flavor to them, have a certain ring to them, have a chaska to them. So I feel that, okay, if you start paying attention to those lines, and it's not like, okay, you have to now make some meta analysis of them. It's just that you notice them, and at a subconscious level, then you start developing a knack to come up with those kind of lines yourself.
To sort of think.
But yeah, if it's a precious newspaper, then you quickly say, okay, what is this? Okay, World Cup final. Okay, two, what has happened? First innings is over. Adam Gilchrist has scored 100 in 5 balls. I'm exaggerating. And we have to release an early edition. We don't have time to wait for the second edition. The story is Adam Gilchrist, so Adam. So you have to get the key facts, focus on the key facts, and then work around.
I think we used a lot
I
of.
hope I'm.
No, from what I remember. Am I on? No. So from what I remember, I also think puns were a lot of. You were a lot of into puns as well. So I mean, you used phrases.
Yeah. It's not very highbrow anymore, but yeah, sure. Puns. I mean, all the discerning people feel that the puns are the lowest form of.
Okay.
Anyway, go on.
Okay, so we'll take a couple of questions. So Ramanand is asking, cliches are often a part of sports writing. How do you try to find interesting analogies or turns of phrase that avoid these and have your own distinct?
Yeah. Okay. So one is to trust your own instinct. And like if you notice the other day, so the other day Ajinkya Rahane was doing a virtual press conference from Australia. Okay. Uh, and so what helps is to observe, just observe whatever it is that you can see, whatever that strikes you. Now in a virtual PC, there's not much to see. Okay, but and I noticed that his eyebrows keep going up with every point he explains. His eyebrows keep going up, and then what you do in such a situation is, okay, you don't want to say something cliched, but so you close your eyes and you just think what it reminds you. And what it reminded me of was just leaping dolphins, uh, just dolphins leaping out of the water, going back in. And that's what I wrote. So you go, and I think after a few years, okay, what is corny and what is good. And this I thought was good. Somebody else may feel differently, but I was happy, and I went ahead. So that's what you do. You note down. Okay, eyebrows are going up now. What could I compare this to something? What is it that it reminds me of? Okay, dolphins. So that is one thing to avoid the cliche. And you know, and sometimes it's really not hard to avoid the cliche. You just don't use them. You really don't have to. You really don't have to anymore say that cricket is a game of glorious uncertainties, or those lines. You can simply drop them. Simply drop them. And if you find sometimes the thing with cliches is, again, there are it's so ingrained, and sometimes you think of that phrase, then maybe in your first draft you write it out, then you mark it that, okay, it's a cliche, I'm not going to use cliches. Okay, this is one of the ground. So then what is it uh, that you yourself can come? Like everybody says this is different than chalk and cheese. This is as different as chalk and cheese. Why does it have to be chalk and cheese always? It could be chalk and it could be anything. You could just make it chalk and paneer. That's a little corny, but I'm saying there are a million things you can do with. So that is one way. You take a cliche.
You've gone on mute. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, go.
Yeah. So that is what I do.
All right. So on that note, we are going to put you on the spot in a minute to ask you a quiz question, which has a tiny prize related to our reading compounds as well. Before we do that, one quick question for you from Dharmendra, which is, what is the future for writing as a sustainable career?
It depends on what type of writing it is, Dharmendra. I mean, if it's the media industry is facing a lot of challenges currently. People are losing jobs. I lost my job at PT last year. But I feel at the same time, I heard the other day I was reading it's Kevin O'Leary, right? The Shark Tank guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kevin O'Leary said how these skills are picking up again. How there's great demand for it, because see, if you can no longer write for a newspaper, you can and if but at the same time, if you are a sound writer who can come up with creative lines, and good writing has to be a mix of the simple and the smart. It can't be all smart. That is annoying. So if you are a sound writer like that, there's a lot of demand from say people who want their own their Instagram presence or their online presence, have to keep posting. The posts have to be interesting. So in that sense, the skill from whatever I read is actually, there's an increasing demand for good writing skills. It's just that it's required in different sort of in non-traditional, so far non-traditional companies. Also, I think it's a again corpcom and so on, because a lot of people who are maybe on the tech side of things or so on, uh, they've grown up with SMS lingo. I'm not saying all of them. Uh, so it's hard to find people who can even write complete sentences. And if you can put them across well, then I'm sure there's some kind of. But yes, other fields are definitely, other writing related fields are going a rough ways. Newspapers, publishing, uh, these are struggling, I guess. And if one wants to become a mainstream writer, then one will have to do a lot of due diligence before picking that up as a career. Really, what the options are. Also, with writing, this is what I tell many youngsters. If anybody comes to me for career guidance, I said, look, you're at academics. If you have options in IT or management, wherever, please go for that. And because writing is something, it's an important talent. But it's something you can do on the side as well. You know. But if you're absolutely consumed by it and if you don't have other career plans, then yes, you should do your just check what the scope for employment is next.
And I think, just to add to that, I personally always felt that journalism was not as much about writing as about finding good stories and finding the means to find good stories. Because a lot of good stories, in office especially, we had a lot of people who could just find the stories which nobody else could. And that made them way better journalists than just someone who had, who was a fluent writer or who had great experience.
No, of course. I mean, that comes first. News and contacts come first in journalism. The writing part comes second. There's no doubt about
it. So Ankita is asking, how much time do you spend editing your writing? And do you work on it until you're satisfied, or do you stick to a deadline and just let it go?
No, I work on it quite a bit. Yes, and if the deadline is extremely short, then but I still give it a once over very quickly. And luckily, and just because of the amount of years I have spent, I can do it pretty fast also. So I absolutely edit till the last possible.
And a sort of close question on the heels of that is, what are some ways of ensuring that the quality of your output remains high, even when you're working under these time constraints? Do you have any, especially when, for example, you spoke about reviewing your work to remove the cliches that you have written down. So are there any sort of ways in which you are able to maintain a particular standard when you're rewriting your stuff?
Yeah, again, I think it's something, if it is something that you've grown up with, it is something that has been important to you throughout your career, then it is then you will, over a period of time, develop the ability to write well even under deadline. Maybe not every copy will be as good as or really tick all the boxes, but you'll still maintain a certain standard. So that comes with experience, I feel, and if it is important, so if it matters to you, you will do it consistently, and then till you reach a point where you can do it fast at irrespective of the deadline.
Just doing it multiple times will help you hone those skills that you have.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
All right. So here's a quiz.
And then you have to put, sorry, I'll just complete this.
Sorry, go ahead.
You also have to, you have to put yourself in those situations. So, Ankita, right? Ankita asked the question.
This
So
was
what Ankita?
Omkar. She asked the earlier. So Omkar asked this particular question.
Omkar. Okay. So my answer to Omkar is, you can just put yourself in those situations. Give you what is he around? Can I know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm around.
Yeah. So Omkar, what you could do is, if you want to learn writing well and that too fast, is just to give drills, practice some drills yourself. Like, what are you interested in? Hello.
Food writing, music, maybe a bit of cricket, just off the
Okay.
top
So
of my head.
right. So if you have to do a restaurant review, for example, and you have half an hour, right? So you just try writing a review in half an hour,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
or you try writing a cricket match report, uh, maybe just a first innings report or whatever, in half an hour or 40 minutes or whatever it is. So then that's one way to, for a non-journalist, to sort of learn writing fast, and that too
So
at a certain time.
essentially creating those newsroom like conditions where there are deadlines, there's a short deadline, and you sort of self-imposing all of those constraints upon yourself to be able
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work within those bounds.
right. Yeah, just test yourself.
Seems like an interesting experiment.
I hope it is interesting for you.
I'll give it a try. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And if you do well, Akshay will give you a job.
I'm looking for one myself.
All right. So let's go on to a quiz question. So we are also into, we love quizzing, and a sort of like this question will be related to something that you like as well. As a
Okay.
prize for that, as a sort of semi-incentive for you to even cracking it and working hard towards getting it, is we have these CTQ compounds which we run, which help you develop habits over time. And
Okay.
we'll give you a slot on one of those compounds, which again you can use it for yourself or you can gift it to anybody you like.
Nice.
So this is the question for you.
Yeah.
This is your question. So it was reported as a matrix shot from the 2005 US Open men's final after David Foster Wallace wrote about this magical shot in his essay, Watching Federer is a Religious Experience.
Yeah.
What was special about this shot?
I think he hit it moving backwards.
That's exactly what David Foster Wallace said. So do
Okay.
you want, there is a little addition to it that I want in the answer. You're absolutely bang on about it. That's what he wrote, that he fell backwards.
Yeah, inside out forehand. I don't know. No, there's nothing else that. There's no other detail that I remember.
Let's say, I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
So this is something as a writer you would think, really, I mean, how did this happen?
Okay.
I mean, as a writer reading another writer's work, you would think, how did this go through? Okay, so not a very good hint. So I'll give you one more. So people went on YouTube. They loved it. I mean, people could imagine it very well, and they went on YouTube to watch it. And they,
big scene where he dodges the bullet.
yeah, that's what everyone's expectation was. But the answer is that it never happened. That shot didn't happen in that match at all.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, that's one of the things that good sports writing can do, which is to, so a lot of people believed they saw it as well. But if you actually go back to the match and see it, that shot, there is one shot that comes sort of close, but it's nowhere close to how he described it.
Okay.
But it never happened. So that was the sort of extra answer that we were looking for.
Oh. Sorry.
All right, so no problem. So we'll go on to the other art of, something that comes before writing, something that is again relevant today because a lot of people are doing these kind of calls, these interviews, podcasts, and so on. So let's start with the skills that you need for interviewing people. So you have, let's start with your most interesting interviews, which have been the most memorable for you, and also something that went on very well. An interview that you think flowed very well, and as a result, the output of it was great.
Yeah. Where you just strike a chord with the person, it all goes well. Okay, so I'll start with the interviews that were interesting experiences. One was with Mike Tyson, and the thing is that it was all very it was all just so random. Everything was so random. Okay, he was brought here by some Arabs for some Kumite fighting league or something like that, and there was a press conference, and then they one-on-ones were in the at the St. Regis Hotel, and he was in one room, adjacent room, doing the interview, and everybody else, they had also booked a suite. These were the good old pre-corona days where press conferences would be lavish, and so everybody else was in a suite, and there were a random cast of characters around. Adi Pancholi walked in wearing sunglasses, and Salman's bodyguard Shera, he was in charge of the security, Tyson's security. So this is all it was fun, even just waiting. And then all of us got like about a minute or 2 minutes of one-on-one with Mike Tyson, and I got 100 seconds. Okay, and and his manager was this very typical American guy. Like even his the just the the words he was using. You got a sec, you got a minute, pal. Stuff like that. So he was polite, but he was very like on the ball. Got a minute and a half, pal. And so when my turn came, the thing about Mike Tyson is you cannot imagine how big he is. Huge, and he's not very tall, but his width is like something else. He was like Lal Bagh Sa Raja or something. And this big head, like, and I think, and I shook hands with him, and and then the line again the uh, so like I said, it's important to listen to what you first feel, what your first response is when you either see somebody or shake hands. I felt like crocodile had grabbed my arm. That's the easy strength, and he wasn't even trying to do anything. He just held my hand, but that was the pull that I felt, and huge hands, and but I got a minute and a half, and just because he also Mike Tyson, like, he writes the story himself, kind of. It's bound to be interesting. But I started with that line that handshake felt like was like crocodile was grabbing your arm. So and so there was a lot of color to add, and even with those 100 seconds, I could then weave around a lead story from that, a good 700, 800. Because even in a minute and a half, I got to ask some 5, 6 quick questions, just fatapat. And that all put together with the mood and everything was, you know, it was really an interesting thing. Also, he was such a huge figure, especially when we were growing up. The things that he did, not just the scandals, even as a fighter. I mean, I very clearly remember there was a very high bout of his with Michael Spinks, and months of publicity, articles, and so on. And then the bout came, and we watched the news. 91 seconds. Oh, game over. People boxers would be scared. Anyway, so that was Tyson. The other one was uh, this was during the match fixing years when the story first broke, late 90s, 1997 to be precise. And I just thought, okay, no, so far Imran Khan hasn't spoken about this. Might, what, and completely out of the blue, I just called in Pakistan from the midday office, which was in Parel, and I somehow got the number of of the hospital He has with the Shaukat Khanum Memorial Hospital. Then from the hospital, I think I got some other number, and then finally, those were the days you asked for Imran Khan's number, somebody gave it to you. Also, Midday was a very popular paper back those days. And then I rang that number, and it was, I think, in the afternoon, and I think an old man picked up the phone, you know, probably his father, and they're Punjabis after end of the day, they're Punjabis. So I could hear him shout, "Oi, Imran, eh?" They said, phone hai. And Imran came on the line, and he sounded a little tired. He was probably taking a nap or something. He was sounding tired and said, "Okay, ask me, what do you want to know?" And he did. He spoke for about 5 minutes, and I did this completely out of the blue. Sorry if it sounds like tooting my own horn, but I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't told Ayaz, who was the editor. But when I got the interview, I told him, and he was thrilled. He was absolutely thrilled, and they carried it as a fly lead. So front page, over the lead as a box. And Imran, I think, had said yes, match fixing exists, and so on. So that was one, and an interview where the conversation flowed. Probably one with there's the very famous British advertising guy called Thomas Hegarty, and he's been knighted and so on. He had come to India, uh, and I had interviewed him, and I remember that was a great chat, because somehow sometimes the Westerners tend to be a little more open. They're not as guarded. I mean, he may be more guarded if he's talking to a British paper, because that's there.
Right.
But it was absolutely great. Then he ended up being a tennis fan, and we had, it was a nice conversation. So that's one that comes to mind.
So especially when you do these long interviews, obviously when you have a short time, there's not enough time to sort of have any rapport establishment or anything. But when you're doing these longer interviews, do you have any tips on how to quickly establish that rapport so that you can get the best out?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be you have to be on time. I'm not the most punctual guy in normal, but when there's an interview, I don't take a chance. I reach like well in advance, on time, always. You have to dress well. Again, this is something for some reason journalists don't like, and but you have to dress well. You have to make a good impression. I'm not saying be overdressed or wear expensive things. No, just be neat. You have to get across that that you've read up, you know something about that person, and maybe start with a couple of easy questions, looseners. So then you ease into it, and the person relaxes a bit. And unlike you asked me very tough questions. Right?
I know. This interview has gone downslide right from the start.
So those would be my tips.
So just as an example, we were talking yesterday about how you asked Boris Becker whether he thought strawberries and cream were overrated at Wimbledon as your. I don't know if that was the opening question, but
that was on email. That was on email. Yeah, but I have made certain faux pas even in person, where and I thought, but one makes these mistakes when you're.
But one way to be memorable is to be this kind of unexpected.
So it can be unexpected, and it can be fun. Like the strawberries question is not going to offend him, but but sometimes one comes to the that probing question right away, uh, and that sometimes backfires, and then you later, or sometimes you yourself want to sound a little clever, like I said, uh, thinking that, oh, this guy will now think, oh, what a brilliant wordsmith this person, but that doesn't always work out. So it's better to sort of take it slow and ease your way into it, and that killer question has then comes in after you've after a while, or towards the middle of
Soften them up with all the
I
looseness.
patent him for the kill.
Okay, I hope you're reading the chat also, because people are sending comments and interesting, funny jokes as well online. So let's go on to how do you prepare for an interview? You mentioned that you read up on that person as well, but do you practice your questions? Do you sort of, sometimes I feel that the spontaneity goes if you have practiced too much, or if you have thought about it too much. How much of preparation goes
What spontaneity? I mean,
in the writing? Yeah, not so much, but
I'm not going on a date, or I'm not, or we are not going to do a movie scene, where, okay, that spontaneity is going to result in something. No, okay, but I know what you're saying, but it's best to at least have the list of questions, and have a certain, do a certain mapping out. That, okay, this is what I'm going to open. So on. The spontaneity will come from how that interview is going, right? Because then say something, then you'll have a counter question, and so on. So that's where the spontaneity will come. But then there are people who need no notes at all, who can just, I mean, they do probably prepare their questions, but they don't, it's all in their head, and they can simply, they don't need the notes. But I don't, I mean, I do make a list of questions. Then, so what I do is I first make a spontaneous, to use your word, a spontaneous list of questions. Then in the final list, what I do is I take them according to, okay, this will be at the start, this will be after this, and so on. That's the final list. So I do work on this.
planned spontaneous.
Huh?
Planned
Sorry.
spontaneous.
Yeah, correct.
All right. So let's go on to the art of basically telling the story. So now we have sort of covered the sort of nuts and bolts of writing and talking and interviewing. But as a story, when you're presenting it, again, as an editor, what do you think? Can you tell us what elements to a story make it unique?
Yeah. So, okay, the simple answer is it has to be a mix of readability and relevance. If I have spoken to Tendulkar today, I can't just go on about something that is not related to current affairs. So he's talking about World Test Championship. So I have to, yes, I can maybe take a few lines to set the mood, but I have to come to that point rather quickly. So it has to be a mix of that, of relevance and, I mean, what is the point? That point has to come. So it's in movies they call it the inciting incident. Like I've been attending Boman Irani's script writing workshop the last few months. It's very interesting. Just realize how much goes into a film script. It's not just creativity, and it's not just plot, but there's a certain skeleton to it, structure to it that you have to follow. So there, one of the things there is, it's called the inciting incident in the film, which has to come in the first 20 minutes or so, because that sets that the protagonist on the journey that's going to be most of the film. So it's like that. So when you're writing an interview, you have to quickly come to the point as to what that interview is about, or a story, or even if that's. the inverted pyramid formula. Just that don't make it very dull. But the pyramid has to follow.
And do you follow any other story frameworks?
No, not really. I mean, no. I just keep this in mind that okay, uh, news part is the non-negotiable. It has to come first. Then what you try and do is maybe put in your own individuality a bit, put in some flavor, some masala. Stuff. Masala not in a bad way, not in a stardust kind of way, but make it readable, make it good writing, uh, but not overwriting. I do see some writers just, I mean, finally you wonder what the hell are you going on about? What is the point? So that shouldn't happen.
So at Choose to Think, we also deal a lot with curiosity and habit building. And I know that, I mean, as our listeners would also know through this interview, that you're basically a very curious person. So how are the ways that you do you consciously practice curiosity? What do you seek out these experiences? What are the ways in which you remain or stay curious?
Mm, I think it just, I think if you're interested in things, you will be curious about. So it again depends on, like with the dal bukhar, it's something that, I mean, even uh, so in that phase, especially, I was, I enjoy these things a little more. But, and so when the Sunday HT had this section where just experience something and write about it, then we got in touch with ITC and they said, okay, come. So I was in the kitchen of Peshawari making dal bukhara. So yeah, I think it completely the stems out of interest. So and then the good thing about that is then you can do a lot of cross referencing in your writing. If you're interested in multiple things, you know, then you can connect something in sports to some example from the from the movies or food or different things. So 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 if I like watches, for example, okay, if I then I know that okay, Pedro wears Rolex, not just wears it, but there's a certain, you get that perspective. Okay, it's a great association of brands in it, Pedro and Rolex. They're just perfect for each other. So you develop these perspectives. Uh, you know, Nadal wears Richard Mille, which is like a new watch compared to a Rolex, a new brand, and the and a lot of people criticize Federer for being this elitist uh, person, Rolex, and Nadal is more humble, which he is. But the Richard Mille costs about 2 crores. It's such a complicated watch, and that's 10 times what a Rolex almost. So you I think that's what being interested in different things does, and can bring it all, right? Whatever work that. So again, to answer your question, just be interested. At the same time, don't force it. If you're not interested in something, don't force it also. Uh,
We'll come to a bunch of rapid fire questions with you. Before we do that, now that you have sort of followed the careers and of many different, not just celebrities, high performing athletes at the top of their profession pretty closely. So what can you think of any habits or skills which they have, which a common man wouldn't know, or it would be interesting to pick it up, like something you learned from watching them or following them?
yeah, yeah. I think one great thing about athletes is whatever they may be otherwise or not but they are very disciplined. Uh, and that's one thing that you learn from them. They also have like Sindhu, PV Sindhu, for example. No mobile phone for, I mean, Gopi Chand just before the Rio Olympics. Uh, he didn't give, or some other major event. Most probably it was the Rio. He just took her phone away, saying that, okay, now for the next 4 to 6 weeks or whatever that period is, you are not going to get it. And to do it day in and day out. So these are things that you learn from, you know. Or Sachin, even when he was starting out, used to maintain a small diet. Uh, uh, just noting down, okay, this is my schedule, what I and even the sheer respect he had for his vocation, you know, that was also something very admirable. Never took it for granted. Treated his kit like it was, it was something sacred, you know. So I think those things are quite inspiring, and you do learn a lot. And for example, in this case, what you would see is, okay, whatever my career may be, but it is my career. It's what feeds me, and I need to respect. Many times we feel fed up of our jobs, and so it's natural. It's also true that we meet some really terrible people, professional life, and you feel fed up, and you develop some bitterness. But times like these, when you see something like this, like Sachin's last gesture when he retired, the Namaskar Kela pitch. That was mind blowing. I mean, it was extremely touching, and a huge lesson. That it's your karma book. Imran Khan, again, I keep going back to Imran. I know it's not politically correct to mention him, but extremely admirable uh, work ethic, priorities. He said like when he was coming up, he said, I used to feel that all people have big dreams. Everybody wants. And he said, in reality, yeah, as children, we all want fantastic things. We all want to be Superman and pilot and this. But as we grow up, he said, most people just want simple things. But he said, I was not like that. I always wanted something. And so it all starts from there. And so these are lessons that you learn.
That's fascinating. I think a lot of times we miss I mean, as a reader who never get to see these people from like off screen, or what you call it, behind
Yeah.
the scenes. So
Yeah.
That's where a lot of resonance and interesting stories lie, which really don't get noticed, or rather they don't come to the front because they don't take that sort of priority over all the other things, other achievements that they're doing on the hard.
Even Sunil Gavaskar, again, a guy who lives a very organized life. Even today, eats sparingly, exercises. He's 70 plus now. Will never miss his exercise. Right priority. So that is something is, and I have also sort of adapted or what adopt somehow.
All right, so let's end this super interesting talk with some of your favorites, Akshay. And so just think of it in sort of a quick succession of whatever comes to your mind. You can just say it. So let's start with your favorite headlines, whether you have now your own or something that you have read. Any of your favorites that stick to your mind.
Okay. Again, my favorite may again sound like Little Wayne, but I did like during the 2006 Football World Cup, there was a headline, nothing's, when Ghana was doing well, the headline was, nothing's Ghana stop us now. So that is one that I like. And there were many, there've been many, but I mean, not of mine, but that I've come across different papers, magazines. Unfortunately, I don't
All right.
remember them now.
Okay. Who are your favorite writers? Both
My
as
favorite
journalists or
writers, yeah. So names that come again spontaneously are Manu Joseph, um, then internationally there's an author called Peter Mayle, uh, who just writes these very relaxing, enjoyable books about Provence. Because he wrote a book called A Year in Provence, which is simply about a year in Provence. And he writes about all nice things, wines and this and that. So I like him. I like David Halberstam, who wrote Michael Jordan's biography, authorized biography, an extremely rigorous writer. He interviewed some 90 people, 90 for that book. Not a great stylist, but extremely hardworking, and it's such a great book. It's called Playing for Keeps. Oh yeah, and of course John Krakauer. John Krakauer's Into Thin Air. Beautiful writer, just beautiful writer. The feeling with which Into Thin Air has just poured from here, you can make out. The thing is, after some years in the business, you can make out that something has come from the heart. John Krakauer has written many books, but Into Thin Air is about this disastrous Everest expedition, which he was on also. And he just saw a lot of his colleagues and friends he had made along the way die. There was one storm, one night, a lot of people perished. It came back, he was haunted and wrote about it. So these are books that really have, they're beautiful, they're just splendid.
on that same note, someone whose biopic or biography should be out there, and is it?
Vinod Kamri.
Yeah.
Because a very interesting character. I don't sympathize with him too much. I think it's not like I don't see him. It's not like I feel he also had deserved some play. But again, that's one name that comes to mind. And actually, Manoj Prabhakar also. You know, I've always, in fact, I had suggested it to some Manoj Prabhakar because he was that typical Delhi wala character and a fine fantastic bowler also. The amount of the swing that he got when bowling, he was a really good cricketer, great bowler, very dogged batsman also, and a very cunning chap. And then he goes around and he performs the sting operation on the legends of Indian cricket. Goes to Gavaskar's house, rings his bell, sting with a briefcase, goes to, they all live in the same building, goes to Shastri's house, goes here, there, and a very colorful guy. So that is, I think that would make, he's not like a huge name, but I think he would make for an interesting bio.
So Dharmendra is suggesting that you should do the Kamli biography totally, and he remembers your piece. I mean, the one he remembers as a youngster is the one that was written by on Sachin and Vinod Kambli's as kids, as one of the earliest his memories and story. There's an interesting trivia just to add to that is my husband's cousins. He was in the team against whom Kamli and he was playing for the school who were against Sachin and Kamli innings. So there is an inside joke in there
Okay,
thing
same thing.
that I don't remember. I think one of the Bombay South Mumbai teams. I think it was.
Acha, acha, okay, okay. Sorry.
Not sure which. Anyway, so they keep saying that they are the reason they came to they came to fame, Kamli and Sachin, because they performed.
Yeah.
They got their chance.
Yeah, 664 runs partnership.
Yeah. All right. So let's go on to your favorite podcast or magazine or newspaper. Let's say magazine because or website. So that's the that's what
Uh,
people read nowadays. You can go with a newspaper as well.
I have subscribed to the New York Times online, then Guardian. I wouldn't say they are my favorites, but just one needs to be keep abreast of things. Um, I don't have a favorite newspaper. I quite enjoy
What is
reading
the
Bombay
first?
Times.
What is the first website you go to when you log in?
Sorry, and to answer your question
Sorry,
about
Bombay
magazines,
Times. Yeah. Right.
I quite enjoy reading.
Yeah.
Plus, they have some good puzzles. So,
Right.
but jokes aside, I think they sometimes have some good stuff.
I'll
Let's
take
not
your
keep
word
our
for it, Akshay. I haven't read it.
and and there's this international magazine that my wife introduced me to. It's called Monocle. Monocle. It's really nice, well produced, beautifully designed, and not over designed. That's the other thing. Even in magazines, just as in writing you have overwriting, in magazines everything is just, some magazines are too well designed, yeah, and there's too much going on. But Monocle is beautiful, and it costs it's very expensive, but it's worth it. It's a quarterly. Uh, it's a UK publication. Highbrow, yes, I saw. I think Dharmendra mentioned, but again they talk
Hard
about
to
some nice things.
imagine that a magazine called Monocle is going to be from anywhere other than the UK.
Good one. Good one.
All right. Akshay,
So
who
that
is
is currently my favorite. All the other fancy ones, the GQs and the Condé Nast and everything. I briefly worked in Condé Nast. They are good to flip through, and they're nice to look at, but I didn't always enjoy the reading.
okay? Who is the goat according to you? Greatest of all time.
For now, I will still give Federer the edge. But if Djokovic wins the Grand Slam, then I think there's no argument. This year he can sweep all four. Plus he can take the Olympic gold. If he does that, then you have to handle. Currently, I'll still give Federer the edge, and not just statistically. My argument is greatness is a combination of. Yes, uh, stats are important. Of course, they're the. But if Djokovic gets the Grand Slam, but Federer has this great combination. I mean, he's just fabulous athlete. You also have to factor in the slight slowing down of surfaces, the strings that have helped tennis become more foolproof and error-free. But I think if you gave a wooden racket in all these guys' hands, I would still feel Federer would be the best. But if Djokovic gets a Grand Slam, then it would just be very unfair and very then keep saying that no, it's still not okay. That's another thing that sport teaches. It teaches you sports and journalism. These things teach you that you learn acceptance.
And finally, just to wind it up, one habit that you think has helped in your career as a writer or generally as well.
I always played sports, so I would say that is one habit that has uh, really helped me, not just in terms of the physical side, the fitness side, or whatever, but even mentally. Uh, so that is one thing. And yes, I think, like I said at the beginning, when I started reading sports magazines very early. By the time I was in fifth, I would read almost the entire article. I may not would not probably understand all of it, but I had started reading it, and that really, the brain has plasticity. That's what one keeps reading these days, and I think that really made writing came quite easily. That at least basic writing. So
All right.
these two habits.
On that note, thanks a lot, Akshay. I think I spoke to you more about writing than I ever did when I was working as a writer. So thank you so much, and thanks for opening up to all of us as well. I'll stop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Santi.
I'll just open this up to anyone who would like to talk and open mic at this point and say whether you want to share something.
Sanasi, you want to turn off the recording? I think that.
Yeah, I'll stop.